me. Somebody always is going to have it worse than me. And if I'm in positions in life where if I'm comparing myself to anybody, that's probably where I'm going to be the most unhappy. And I try not to do that. We all have those times where we kind of look at other things and compare, but just flipping the right perspective, the right mindset. And I think having that optimistic mindset as well, it can help you be very, very successful. And so I always say, perspective, perseverance, and then just some passion is something that can get you to where you want to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Matt Drinkon. We are here at the Eternal Optimist podcast studio, and we are here today with a gentleman that I would say needs no introduction. If you don't know him, he needs the introduction. But if you do know him, he is just a massive force. He's an incredible human being. I met him, and instantly when I first met Mr. Rich Moyer in person last summer, about a year ago, I remember it's easy to remember Rich. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's got a huge heart and a serious business demeanor, and he's got a lot to share with us today. So, Mr. Rich Moyer, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, real pleasure. And I remember the first time that we connected was our mutual friend, Mr. Josh Goodman. Shout out to Josh. Just saw him in Florida last week. Yeah, love Josh. And we played a little bit of golf together last year. And I did not know at the time that you have originated and owned one of the developing premier brands across our country in Hoppin brand. And we're going to get to Hoppin in a little while. But first, before we talk business and all that successful stuff and where that is, I'd like to kind of build a bridge and share some of the more challenging things so our audience can get to know you. So can you first just give us a couple stats? Just who is Rich Moyer? If you can give us just your age, family, just a little bit of stuff to get us started, and then we'll go into some deeper questions. Rich?
Yeah, Rich Moyer. I was born in Northeast Pennsylvania in the Pocono Mountains. Two very young parents raised me and my brother to be a great older gentleman now, with both of us having very successful businesses and both entrepreneurs. Moved to the South at 18, right out of high school, got into the golf industry. The golf industry led me to realizing that I needed to either be in sales or start my own company. And started my first company at 25, grew that to a very successful business and exited that for multi-millions 2 months in my fourth year of business. Since then, and in that process, I met my now wife, and we've been together for almost 5 years now. We just welcomed our first son last August. So our first child to the world. And life's a little bit different now, but overall, man, I'm just a normal human being that has a little bit of a different drive, I would say, than some people.
That's a great way to start. So if you caught that team, Rich is almost a year, a little bit shy of a year of being a dad, and it was cool because we had this actual podcast scheduled for August of last year. And I get a text from Rich or an email from his iPhone and says, "Hey Matt, we're going to labor right now, so we got to cancel." Literally, it was happening that day. So can you take us back
11 days early?
Yeah, what happened? Can you walk us through what happened that day that you sent me the message? Hey, we got to cancel. I'm having a baby. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Definitely wasn't expecting early, right? Most people are like, oh, your first one's going to be late. Yeah. So wife woke up at like 1 o'clock in the morning. She's like, I think it's time. So we went through, just looking at the contractions and the timing. And it was just funny because we were like, do we go now? Do we not go now? We ended up going, and just a long story short, we ended up coming back home, and that whole process was, you start to realize, like, you obviously appreciate your wife, but you watch her give birth to a baby, you really start to appreciate how strong and just amazing they are as women. And so that process was wild. It was fun. It was definitely entertaining. And then also, I woke up and I was like, I think I have something that I need to cancel. So I looked at my calendar and I said, I need to email Matt and let him know. Kind of business never shuts off, I guess, even when you're about to have the biggest day of your life. So, about within 24 hours after that, we were back at the hospital, and baby boy was born pretty quickly.
Oh, amazing. If you can put it into words, what was that like the first minute after your son was born?
Man, I would say unreal, right? I don't even remember that time because you're just so in the moment. You kind of black out. And we go back and look at pictures. The nurse was like, take pictures of this, take pictures of that before she went into labor fully. And she's like, your wife will appreciate it. So we went back and looked at when he came out and we were holding him. Some of the only thing that I kind of really remember is when he came out and his head was in the shape of a cone. I was like, is his head going to stay like that? And they all started laughing. So, just first time dad things that you're like, what the heck what's going on with his head? But yeah, it was an experience that you wish that you can remember every solid second of it.
Heck yeah, man. I think that may be the first time in my entire life that I literally could not. I mean, I couldn't speak. I couldn't function. I mean, the only other experience I can remember that was like that was the exact opposite. It was a tragedy. It was when my dad passed away. I couldn't, and it was just like overwhelming. I couldn't speak at that time. That was 10 years before. But in 2015, we had our first child. When she was born, after 23 and a half hours of labor, I was like crying and I couldn't talk. As someone who grew up in in a strong household where men don't really share their feelings, right? This feeling was coming out of me. I didn't know what it was, and I was crying. And I couldn't speak, and it was like a weird, I knew everything changed from that moment forward, but it was just such a surreal, unreal moment. So thank you for sharing.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that's challenging, because we could talk about the success of the business. I do want to talk about the success of the business and where your business is headed. But before we get to that, I'd love to kind of go back in time and give you carte blanche to take us back, Rich, to a time in your life. It could be at birth. It can be yesterday, just some time that something very challenging for you happened. And I'll just let you take it from there and you just walk us through, please.
Not business related, but it's given me a great perspective on life and in business. But during the time of going through it, it probably wasn't challenging because it was our life. But, my brother was diagnosed with brain cancer at a very young age, at 1 year old. And we ended up losing him at 2.5 years old. But he taught me more in 2.5 years than anybody has taught me in 36 years of now living. So it's an amazing process to have that a part of my life, to be able to go through a year and a half of our life living in the Ronald McDonald house, being at the hospital all the time, and seeing true toughness from a 2-year-old. When the doctor said he wasn't going to make it past this age, he wasn't going to be able to walk, he wasn't going to be able to do this. You really start to look at your life and appreciate what is truly a problem. And I can guarantee you the things that you wake up, if you're waking up in your own bed, being able to go to work and do what you want to do every single day, your problems are not true problems. So that challenge of, just going through that process and with my family, and it could rip your family apart. It can bring them closer. For us, it brought us a lot closer. And like you were saying, like, not a lot of emotion from my family. I think I speak about it the most. And my mom, my dad, my older brother, they kind of don't talk about it as much. But that portion of life, to watch a 2-year-old fight the worst disease in the world, not knowing if he was going to wake up the next day with a smile on his face, it really puts a different perspective on life in general. And for me, I get to wake up every single day and be able to bless the people that are in my inner circle and people that I've, across the country that reach out to me. And if there's any way that I can help them, it just gave me a different perspective. So I'm very even keel. Don't get too high, don't get too low. And a lot of that is just because of, what I went through with him and watching the things that he went through. Like, sure, I might have a bad day, but I'm still waking up in my bed healthy. And I go to Ronald McDonald House. I hadn't done it this previous year with the son, but usually every year, and I will cook or do something for the families that are there. And you really start to appreciate life and have a different perspective when you see these families that have to spend most of their time at the Ronald McDonald House not working, finding ways to pay their bills, their light bill, even put gas in their car, put food on the table. Yeah. And then you see these little kids that are 1, 2, 3, 4 years old running around playing, having fun. And they don't know if they're going to make it till tomorrow. And I think that's probably one of the toughest things that I've been through in life. But again, it taught me so much on perspective, which is one of the most, I think, important things that you need in life for happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your perspective. You definitely sound like an eternal optimist of being able to be grateful for what we have now. And I could have been the same way. So I appreciate you for that. But that's now. That's after the challenge, after the experience? How old were you, Rich, when your brother passed?
Yeah, I was 7 years old, so old enough to remember the ins and outs and playing with him and doing the things in the hospital and pulling around in a cart in the hospital, holding his hand in his bed, and spending Christmas at the Ronald McDonald House and parents saying there's reindeer on the roof. Like, I remember all those things.
Mm. Well, I wonder, what was it like if you're 7 at that time, what was it like having the conversation with your parents that this is happening? If you can recall, I know it's so long ago.
Yeah. I think, like I said, like at that point in time, I don't think it was a difficult situation because it was just our normal life, right? It's just what we dealt with, and that's the things that we had to live with. And especially for my younger brother, like he really didn't know anything different, because 0 to 1, he was a baby. And then when he was diagnosed, that was his life. So when he got older, to really start to understand a little bit from 1 to 2.5, it was just our life. It's just what we dealt with. And there's that kind of transpired throughout my life in general, right? I mean, I'm going to fight my ass off to stay alive with everything I do. And if I start something, I'm going to continue to go until it's finished. And if my back's against the wall, there's nowhere to go except for forward. So, it's just no different than in business, where you really got no other option but to make a decision and find ways to, for him, cure his disease and be happy doing it. For us, what are the problems that we're running into, and what solutions do we create instead of creating more problems or excuses?
Man, I can see why you're so good at what you do, because I'm drinking from this Kool-Aid cup right now. I love it. I'm not hearing any blame. I'm only hearing gratitude and perspective. And take a note here, dear listener, because this is what it's all about. This is the ability in real time to take the challenges and to be able to see that I have gratitude for where I have right now. And I have a challenge. I'm not going to make an excuse. I'm going to move forward and figure it out. And you're talking to a master of that right now. And I'd love to kind of go into your entrepreneurial journey here. Can you tell us your first entrepreneurial gig and what that was, Rich?
Yeah, I was in sales. Sales led me to meeting one of my mentors that helped me start my first company, and it was in the construction world. But all I was a broker of services. So I sold other services for usually smaller companies with, where the owner was in the crew, whether if it was drywall, framing, concrete work, whatever the construction work was. And I'd go out and sell them. And I'd broker the service, and I'd have my work up in the middle. And I was working with big general contractors. They were doing high rises, hospitals, hotels, anything multifamily that was really, really big projects. So where I was successful was I came in and did the job that really nobody else wanted to do. And it was typically at the end of the job, the last 5% of a job, where other contractors were walking off because they've done 95% of the job and they got paid 90% of it, and they were fine with leaving 10% on the table. And I'd come in and just got into a niche. And I think what made me most successful was I answered my phone when people called, and I did what I said I was going to do. And I showed up when I said I was going to show up. And if something went wrong, I didn't make an excuse. I just said, I'll get it fixed. And in the construction world, that's a little bit rare. As anybody that's built a home or has been in construction, there's always an excuse. There's always somebody not showing up, and there's always a delay. So I got fortunate to have a great mentor, and I grew that business very, very rapidly. Did 1.6 million my first year, 3.6 my second year, 6.5 my third year, and sold it for multi-millions 2 months into my fourth year business.
Okay, so grew the business rapidly in a few years by leaning on the cornerstones of do what you say you're going to do. Show up on time, do the job well, keep your phone on. I mean, you did anyone in construction out there knows that getting contractors, subcontractors, vendors to show up and do it without an excuse is literally impossible. So to hear someone that, if you do follow through, this is what happens. And Rich is a great example. Of course, if you put Rich's work ethic on there too, I imagine that has something to do with it.
Those days, it was 16, 18-hour days, legit. I mean, I was doing it all, and waking up at 5 a.m. to get a workout in. 6 a.m. phone was buzzing because somebody was calling me for something. So, and then wrap up at 5 or 6. And then I was doing at that point, the first couple of years, I was doing all my bookkeeping and accounts receivable. So you run into the money problems, and you got to be the guy that calls everybody to say, I need some payment.
Yep. Well, I'm curious. You mentioned you would still get up and do your exercise in the morning. Have you always maintained an exercise regimen, like from day one as an adult until now, throughout all of the businesses and all the stuff that's happened? Have you always been that committed to it?
I got into working out when I lived in Myrtle Beach. I was still in the golf industry. Just had some friends that worked with me or worked on the food and beverage side, and they loved to lift. So I started lifting with them, and they were older than me. And then, throughout my first businesses, and I'd say until I met my wife, I was constantly working out early. And then when we met, I probably got a little bit more comfortable, fell asleep a little bit longer, stayed asleep a little bit longer. I wouldn't say I took off completely of working out. I was always doing something physical. It was just, I was really going hard in the gym. But I still play basketball. And now I work out 3 days a week with a trainer. So it just throughout the time, it's always evolved, it's changed. I think having my son, I was like, hey, it's time to set an example for him and get back into, I wasn't out of shape. I was actually skinny. I lost a lot of weight. It was time to set an example and put on some LBs and start to look a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, you said something very interesting to me. You grew your business, 1.6, 3 million, 6 million, and then you had a successful exit. And I have not heard you at any fiber of the being that I am looking at right now in any way said, I'm going to take some time off and just chill out for the rest of my life and live on vacation. You seem like you are driven. What did having a successful business exit do or change about your mindset now that you had some type of proof of success? What happened to your mindset after the successful exit?
Just being the guy in the first business and the guy that always had to answer the phone, the guy that was, hey, if you need something, call Rich. It really wasn't the company name. I realized like, hey, all right, this exit is giving me some liquidity, is giving me the money to actually develop a new business concept and a new idea that I can hire the right people. Because we get into this to have freedom. And sure, I had all the freedom in the world, and I chose to work my ass off for 3 years to be able to have the more freedom in the future. But I'd say the biggest thing I learned is that, you want true freedom, and how do you get that, right? And it really comes down to the team and the people that you bring into your organization. I can't grow a brand by myself. There's people that have just themselves and they're branding themselves, but they're the brand, so they always have to be working. Mm-hmm. Me, I don't technically have to be working because I have a team that is part of the brand, that creates the brand, that's growing the brand. And I work because I enjoy it. I love it. And it's something that wakes me up and gets me out of bed. And there's something to be said that if you can get to that point in life where you're doing what makes you happy every single day, I'd say that's truly living.
So a couple things. You said you work because you love it. What do you love about the work?
It's not the work in itself, right? It's the challenge. It's the ever changing challenges and what solutions can we create? And then on the flip side, I feel like I've always been put on this earth to raise up people around me and make them better and help them achieve things that maybe they never thought they can achieve. And that comes first with the people in my inner circle and my employees and the people that are closest to me. And it's come from, people that are not that close to me that have reached out, and I've just kind of been a mentor for them at some level, or gave them some cheerleading advice to push them to start their own company or do make a leap to a new position. And it's cool to get a phone call from them 2-3 years later, like, hey man, I've been doing my own company now and I'm doing 500, 600, $1 million a year. And I appreciate the push that you gave me. So those are the things, right? If you ask my parents, like, oh man, your son's so successful, he's done all these things, and they will tell you, we don't care how successful he is. We care what he's done for the people around him and who he is as a person. And I think that's the most important thing, right? I mean, it's your values, it's how you treat people and your manners, and being able to have that and be able to actually truly help people. The money just comes with it. When you're doing the right things, it just happens to follow you.
I love that your parents say that. And you kind of just said it in a different way a few minutes ago when you said that part of the reason you exercise is you got to set a great example for your family and for your son. So this intergenerational thing, it's working. These values are passing. What would you say are your core values, Rich?
Business core values are a little bit different than my own core values, but I was just talking with one of my good friends and a guy who works for me yesterday, and just what I kind of said, right? I mean, always do the right thing, right? Doing the right thing is always the right thing. And don't lie. If you're lying, it's harder to keep up with things, right? Just tell the truth. It's just a lot easier to live that way. And it's a lot easier to remember things when you tell the truth, because the truth is the truth. But yeah, the biggest thing is, I always say, like, if you're doing the right thing, is always the right thing. If you're doing the right thing, that everything that you want in life it'll come. And I'm just a big believer, like, if you put it in the universe, and for me, if it's in my mind, it's already completed, right? I can already see 5 years from now that Hoppin will be sold. It's already done. Now I just got to go take the action to make it happen. So it's just a mindset, right? And perspective.
I love it. I've got a big old giddy smile on my face right now, listeners, because the first words out of Rich's mouth when I ask him for values, he says, always do the right thing. And if you look right behind my webcam right now, I have my 7 core values written up here on the wall. And the number 1 core value, always do the right thing. So I think it's just super cool that you shared that. You're okay in my book. So let's talk about Hoppin then. I mean, where did this idea come from? I'm looking at your hat right now. Let's talk about the brand first. So I see this beautiful logo on your hat. Where did this logo and where did this idea for Hoppin come from?
Yeah, the idea came from a friend of mine at the time. He saw the technology in another city, and Charlotte didn't have it. So the idea came from him. I just made it a reality. And the logo came from a good friend of mine, Eric Osborne, who he created my other logos, a few of my other logos, one being our ice cream shop, which is a really cool logo as well, called Two Scoops Creamery. But yeah, the logo was, we just figured out the name first. And then once we had the name, we went to him like, hey, man, can you create us a logo? And since it is a high-tech self-serve tap room, he's like, well, let's throw a hop as the O, and that'll be your icon logo, and then we'll throw a tap on it. So if you look at our logo, our full logo, it's Hoppin, and then this icon logo is actually the O. So it's a really cool logo, and I hope one day this logo becomes like a Nike check and people will recognize it. I was actually on a plane a month or two ago, and the lady was like, I love Hoppin, and this was the hat I was wearing. So it didn't say the name, but she recognized the logo.
Wow. That is super cool. Was that like completely shocking to you? Like, oh, wow. What was your experience when she came up to you?
It was a stewardess, and she's like, I love Hoppin. And I just kind of looked up in shock, because I was like, well, one, I was like, how'd you know? And then two, I was like, okay, I have my hat on, but that's pretty cool that you noticed just from the icon logo and not the actual full logo. And I think I smiled at her and said, did you recognize the logo? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I've been there a few times, because I didn't think she lived in Charlotte, but she obviously flew American Airlines and was in and out of Charlotte. So really, really cool to have somebody recognize the logo. And even people that don't know the brand, they just look at it and like, man, it's a really cool hat. Where can I get that? So that's always cool to know that you have a brand that is truly a brand.
Awesome. I had this very similar experience. I was very humbled recently. I just came out with my first book in March, and I was on a plane, and I happened to be sitting next to a person who owned a bookstore in California. And they somehow, some way, because of my front row dad's connections, they had heard of the podcast and heard of the book. And the guy said, wow, you're that guy. I want to put your book in my store. So as of right now, I'm trying to negotiate putting my book in my first store. But it was a random on a plane thing. Congrats. Too, man. So it was like super humbling, gratifying, to have that. So I love the way that your mind works in solving challenges. You said that you love the ability to solve challenges and do it with a team you care about. What's something that's challenging right now that you're working through solving that's just giving you some energy in life with you and your team?
Yeah, we're in a pivotal stage of business, right? I mean, we're in a little bit of a recession, so sales are down. I have 2 locations that our sales are down to a point where I got to make a bigger decision on one of them. I'm selling. It's not a Hoppin brand; it's another business, but very similar concept. So that's going through those challenges, but also we're in that pivotal position where I'm bringing on a president, right? It's a high dollar hire. That's a big move for us, but it's something that the company needs, the brand needs, my employees need, because I'm not the implementer, right? I'm the visionary. I'm the guy that's thinking big picture. And so just going through that, right, in a position where you're in growth mode, you're going to be having more expenses than you are going to have income coming in until you get to that next pivotal position where you have your franchisees opening across the country. And it's a longer process, right? It's a 14 to 24-month process for us to get these locations open after they once they go through the sales process, find a real estate, and then construction. And we have 5 locations opening this year, so things will start to trickle in. But you have to plan for that growth way ahead of time and make sure you have the team and the infrastructure and the support to be able to support your franchisees. And I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge I'm going through right now is, all of this is self-funded between me and my partner, and no bank money. So we're really just kind of looking at it like, all right, what do we need? What's the growth strategy? What's the team? What's our expenses looking like? And then, how do we get to where we need to get to? And that's it's an exciting challenge, but it's something like, all right, we got to plan for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, now that you have your first child who's less than a year old, you have multiple locations opening, you're making a big expansion move to hire your integrator to run it. How do you manage all that stuff? Because there are a lot of people listening to the show that are hard-charging entrepreneurs just like us that are really struggling with perfectionism. They're struggling with being overwhelmed. And since the moment I met you, Rich, you've just give off this presence of I've got it. I'm cool. I'm under control. I've got it. And you're probably like a duck under the water going a million miles an hour, but you have this countenance, which is commendable. So how do you manage all this stuff that's happening in your world?
Yeah, a lot of it, again, it comes to perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's things I do to manage everything, but having the right perspective and not to get overwhelmed and understand like everything that I know I need to get done is already done in my mind. Mm-hmm. It's just now getting to the point of, all right, what's priority? Let's prioritize. Let's figure out the top things we need to get knocked out. And then having a great team of people that I can trust that have very like-minded abilities that I have as far as just go-getters and people like, there's nobody on my team that I can't say, hey, I need this done, and I can walk away from it and know that it's going to get done. And they're probably going to do 2 or 3, 4 other things along the lines with that, or come back to me and say, we could do it this way as well and make it better. And that is something that I am very fortunate to have. And a big portion of that is just the culture that I built in the brand and making sure that they have ownership in their position, not necessarily equity in the company, but ownership in the position, that they know it's their position and they can fail if they don't have to fear failure. Like, I want them to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And they feel super, super comfortable to make decisions without having to come to me unless it's something that is life or death. And I think that's something that if you can instill that into your team, it gives you the freedom to really focus on the things that are the most important to get the business to the next level.
Has it always rolled off your tongue this easily to be able to empower your team, or were you ever kind of stuck in a perfection place where you were the bottleneck and you were trying to do it all yourself? I know your first business, you did it all, but then I had 50 employees then too. So I think I was forced because of the growth and how quick we grew. So I have 50 employees and 200 plus subcontractors running around North Carolina, South Carolina, and some in Texas. So you have to put trust in people. And I think, naturally it happened for me. And as I started to build these other companies, I knew that I had to do that if I wanted to have the lifestyle that I want and not be in the business day to day. Mm-hmm. And I think, for some people, I think that's why they might be a little bit more perfectionist, which makes them small-minded. They may not be small-minded. They might want a bigger picture, but if they can't get out of that perfectionist and afraid for their team to make mistakes, or they're going to make mistakes, like, you're never going to grow. I say it all the time. Failure is your trampoline to success. If you're not failing, you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're not growing. It's very simple. I want everybody in my team to fail because that's the only way that we're going to grow. Success teaches you nothing. Failure teaches you everything. Masterclass right there, dear listener. Go back and repeat that last minute. Wonderful. Yeah, well done, Rich. Appreciate you sharing that. So I guess what's the question that you're used to answering on podcasts that you like me to ask that I haven't asked yet, if there is such a question?
Man, we've kind of hit some of the top ones. I think, just the ability to. I think a lot of people want to know, like that question you just asked, like how do you create that culture and that team and that vibe of, people want to work for you and you can retain them long term and they can see the bigger vision and the bigger picture. And like you said, like how do you do that? Does it come naturally? Does it not come naturally? for me, it just happened by choice, by chance, and by choice with growing my first business. But yeah, you've kind of hit all the great questions. I always like just having just a more natural conversation, and as things pop up, because some of these podcasts can get pretty redundant with questions, and this has definitely been a fun one.
Dude, okay, well then I'll throw you a curveball here. I'm looking behind your head, and I'm seeing a beautiful framed print over here, and it looks like there's this model wearing a white dress, and then there's this old guy over there on the right. But I'm curious, what picture are we looking at, and what's all this cool stuff behind you?
Yeah, so that's a picture of my wife and I with just some of the information from our wedding day. I have some of my favorite quotes up here. One being John Lennon. The teacher asked the kids in class, what do you guys want to be when you grow up? I don't know if you've heard this quote, and they all say, I want to be a cop, I want to be a pro athlete, I want to be this, I want to be that. And got to him, and he said, I want to be happy. And she said, you don't understand the assignment. And he said, you don't understand life. The goal in life and what you want to be when you grow up is to be happy. And I think that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. The other one is more of, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react. And I think that comes to the perspective. And that's a longer quote, but that's at the end of the quote itself. That's kind of the tagline of the way I live. A lot of shit's going to happen to us in life. 10% of it is what happens, and the other 90% is how you react to it and how you deal with it.
60% of the time, it works every time. Yes, I completely agree. I totally agree. And I think it makes for a great discussion. You're obviously an eternal optimist. You're someone that speaks in the tongue of when hard stuff happens, you learn from it. And you wake up with gratitude. To me, that's eternal optimism. So you have this mindset, and you're one of your favorite quotes ends with, I want to be happy. So I'm curious, are you happy?
Yeah. I'm super happy. I mean, there's obviously with anything, right? We all have bad days. We all have things that are a little bit tougher than others. And, we have relationships that don't always have the best days, whether if it's marriage or if it's friends or if it's business relationships, whatever it is. But yeah, I couldn't be in a better position in life. Beautiful wife, amazing kid. The house that, we could want for right now is more than we could ever ask for, right? I'm very fortunate for the roof that we have over our head, and my family's all healthy. Mom, dad have their own business. My brother has 2 very successful barbershops here in Charlotte, so they're close. I mean, there's really nothing I could ask for more of other than, just being able to have a little bit more freedom because of the growth that I'm in right now. I just have to be fully invested in that, and I know that'll pay off. And I do have a ton of freedom. I can do whatever I want, but I choose to invest a lot of my time and energy in the things that I'm doing because I know that there's a bigger play. But I'm fortunate to be able to spend a lot of time with my child, with my wife, and do things that I feel like somebody working a typical 9-to-5 might not be able to do.
Yeah, when you say freedom, you've said it like a few times now. I'm thinking you're talking about time freedom, or what do you mean by freedom?
Yeah, definitely time, right? Definitely time to just to let go a little bit. I've been doing this for 10 years now, and part of it's my own fault. Like my mom told me the other day, she's like, "Why are you starting another company?" It's part of my own fault. I just have that itch and that I can't quit, and I always want to do something new and continue to grow and continue to add value to the team. So, it's I do it to myself, right? I mean, it's not nothing. I do it for a reason. But then there's days where I'm like, man, I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. And I'm fortunate that I can easily take those days and recoup. But, I can already have envisioned when Hoppin sells and when some of my other investments sell that I will have so much freedom that I can now not be in the business of growing and creating a business, but more of investing in people and ideas and things that I love, and then mentoring. And that's a whole different set of freedom as time. Like I have all the freedom in the world that I want right now. But I'm still in the weeds per se of building these brands. And there's a lot of time and energy that goes into that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to come up with a question here that's different, that's not redundant. So I wrote down a couple. So I'm going to try to zing you here with a couple of them. And I'd say this, that we've talked about challenges. We've talked about your mindset and how you respond to challenges, gratitude, learning. If you stay in this theme of learning, is there something you're intentionally trying to learn right now?
I'll tell you, franchising is a different animal, right? So I've been very successful with a lot of businesses. I've had a lot of businesses that didn't work out and I failed in. Franchising is a different animal. So right now I'm pulling in all the information that I can pull in the franchising world. And there's so much.
Oh, for the audience out there, we just had malfunction. My internet just crashed. Thank you. And hey, moment of gratitude here. We get to reset. So you were saying that there's a lot that goes into franchising, a lot to learn. And yeah, if you could just take it from there, Rich.
Been just working with my fractional CMO over the last little over a year, right? I mean, our marketing guide, things that we did just day to day because they were just things that we did, right? We knew it, we had, but now we have to create this guide that actually shows our franchisees exactly everything we do and everything that we need them to do. It's almost 100 pages, right? So it's very detailed. So like, franchising is a different world when it comes down to really understanding your own business and getting everything out of your mind and into a guide or a document, and being able to repeat it. So just learning a ton, right? And bringing on a president who's been in franchising for 15 years. The things that I'll learn from him, I'm super excited for. And, what he's learned in the last 15 years, the mistakes he's made, I hired him for those mistakes because now I can avoid those mistakes and I can grow faster and get to an exit faster. So it's pretty cool to have those things to look forward to. And there's so much that I have to learn in this world.
Yeah, of course. Very humble, awesome answer. I wonder because we know that all mistakes are actually great opportunities to learn. So I don't have regrets for having made mistakes because you can't learn without them, right? But if there were a mistake that you made, that darn it, I wish I could go back and actually erase that one because that one, I wish I would have done it a little bit differently. Is there any regret or mistake that you like to go back and try again?
Not necessarily regret, but definitely learning. Like, partners are tough. I think if you're going to have a partner in business, you really got to, there's a few things that I always recommend people. Like, what do you think about partners? It's like, you guys both have to have skin in the game. I've had a few partners where I've invested the money and they've come on with sweat equity and I've had to buy them out. With bringing in a partner, both have skin in the game. I mean, there's got to be something that drives them and wakes them up and know that they have some skin in the game. If not, if their work ethic doesn't match your work ethic and you have the money in the game, then it makes it very difficult to have a good partnership. And then on top of that, just going with somebody that's completely different and complements what you're really good at and what they're really good at. If you're exactly the same, then there's really no reason to have a partner. You might as well just do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Great feedback. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. I'm curious. I like to ask people who have shared that they've had successful exits. When you finally get through all that process and you get through the 11th hour changes that always inevitably happen on the other side of the equation that cost us frustration, when you get through all that, what's it like to actually sit there and look at a check and know that your work has been bought and was worth that amount? What is that like, that feeling when you get that check?
It wasn't a check. It was a wire transfer for me, but I remember looking at it, smiling, screenshot it, and I think I sent it to my brother because that was the first time I saw those numbers in the bank account. And since then, I've seen that million plus number in the bank account, most recently in 2023 after I sold a few of my commercial properties. So it was pretty cool to see that again. But for me, it's like that money sitting in the bank is not doing anything good. So my mind's already running. Where do I put it? And a lot of that some of it went into starting the first Hoppin location. Some of it went into commercial real estate. Some of it was invested in some other investments. So yeah, that's something you can just kind of grin, smile at. And then just for me, it's what's next.
Yeah, what I love about you is that you just painted a picture of someone who you had this success and it did not stop you, slow you down. You didn't pause, take a few years off and travel the world and spend it all. It just added to this vision that you have. And I think that's this misnomer about entrepreneurs, is that we're all just trying to get an exit so we can live in the south of France for the rest of our lives, not do anything. And that's not the game. If you love the challenge, then it's continually upping the game and upping the challenge. And I feel that around you, that there's no forever exit. This life is a game. At least that's the way I would interpret it. What's your thought on this?
No, you're 100%
idea?
Spot on. And like I said, even when I have these bigger exits here in the next 4 to 5 years or 6 years, whatever it may end up being, there's always going to be a new challenge, and it's going to be different, right? I'm going to learn to dive into more of an investment side, and maybe it's a private equity side of investing into companies. So I feel like, I'll never stop working, but it's always going to evolve to be, me working a little bit different, and my money working for me instead of me working for my money. And with the first company, I learned so much, but I worked really, really hard. The second company, I'm very hands-off on. It's our ice cream shops. We have 6 locations with several more opening up this year. My business partners manage and run those day to day. But to know that we've developed a brand that is kind of a staple ice cream shop here in Charlotte is really cool. And I've taken this is my newest, or my biggest baby right now, that has the most potential for growth and a big exit. And I do this now completely different than I did my first company. And when I exit this and get into the next thing, you just kind of evolve and you elevate, and you get to a point in life where, what's most important. And there's a lot of things for me that are going to be important at that time.
I love everything I'm hearing. When I heard, I remember the first time I was able to vote back in the 90s, just to date myself. There was this business dude named Ross Perot was running. And I kept thinking, what if we had a business person running the country? That feels like it would make sense. Someone with experience. And, of course, we had, a Trump business person run the country for a while, and we are as a country where we're at. But when I hear you speak, I hear solid, I hear the values come out. I hear business and learning coming out. And I guess the question is, when are you going to run for president, Rich?
Politics. I'm not into politics. The left, right, blue, red, they're all corrupt. And at the end of the day, I always tell people it doesn't matter who's in office. Some make it more difficult than others, as we can tell right now. But at the end of the day, I still got to wake up and go do what I got to do no matter what. Some just give us more challenges than we should. And they focus on the things that they shouldn't be focused on. But again, that's out of our control. I can only control the things that I can control, and that's waking up and doing what I got to do to support my team, my family, and the people around me.
Yes, sir. Rich, when was the last time that you laughed out loud, belly laughed, and couldn't control it? And what was that scenario? What happened there?
It's probably something with my father, honestly. He's always joking around and messing around with people. I don't know why this comes to mind. It's not the last time it happened, but we were at a wedding up in Pennsylvania, and we had to swing by Dick's Sporting Goods for something, and they just happened to be renovating, right? So me and my dad are in there with suits on, and we're like, oh yeah, we're from corporate. People are asking us for help, but we're from corporate. We're coming in to check on the construction. He just saw the construction, and just starts going. So I just jump in with him because I'm his son and I know how he is. And next thing you know, the manager flies out the back. They're like, can we help you? And now we're with corporate. We're just checking everything out. Everything's looking good. We just messed around with them, and the manager when we were leaving opens the door for us, and is just kind of just there the whole time watching us. And you can see everybody on their earpieces hey, these guys are from corporate. These guys are from corporate. These guys are from corporate. And you can see them all talking, and everybody, they didn't have a lot of people on the floor. And then everybody was on the floor. Hey, do you need anything? Is there anything we can help you with? So I just remember actually that popped up because we were talking about it kind of recently. But yeah, there's always something with him. We could be out at dinner and he's messing with the waitress in some form or fashion.
Love it, man. I love it. It reminds me, talking about laugh out loud and maybe the impersonation game. I remember there was a time when I was in college, just after college, that there was a bar that didn't have someone standing at the door. I just stood at the door and started checking everyone's ID, and that was a really fun game to play.
Cover charge.
I cannot say that I did or did not, but I can say that it was a fun game to play. But cool. Well, let's kind of move to wrap up then. I'd love to ask you a couple questions. You're well-read, well-studied, and wise in business and just in mindset and life. I'm curious who might be some mentors, maybe people and or books that you have read that have impacted you. Just can you riff on that for a second? Books or mentors?
Yeah, never was a big reader. Honestly, I hated school and definitely hated reading books at the younger age. So there's been a few people that motivate me that if I need some motivation or just a little kick in the butt. Eric Thomas, I love watching some of his stuff. Like if you want to succeed more than you want to breathe, that's when you'll be successful. So that's always one where if I'm like, all right, man, I'm in a little bit of a rut, I'll listen to that. And then Gary Vaynerchuk always seemed just straightforward. A guy that kind of just gives it and says how it is, right? And this stuff is really simple. It's just a choice. And if you go one direction, it doesn't work, just flip and pivot and go a different direction. So I love listening to his stuff. And then, BV Belk is a very successful real estate investor here, commercial real estate. And I was fortunate enough to work for him at his golf course early on when I was younger. And he's mentored me in a lot of ways. And I just played golf with him a couple of weeks ago. He's 84 years old and still working harder than anybody I know.
This isn't Bill Belk that we're talking about. Is it here in Charlotte?
Owns Belk stores. Nope, just happens to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for that. How about music? Is there a certain song, genre, artist that inspires you, fills your bucket?
Not really. I mean, it just depends on the mood I'm in. My wife I've known her since 2017. She's got me into country. I never listened to it prior to that. So that's been fun, going to some country concerts with her. And outside of that, man, I've always listened to old school R&B, which always surprises people. And then just growing up, rap and hip hop, but I don't listen to that as much. I definitely listen to the older school stuff, but not the new school stuff. That's for my nephew, I guess, the younger age.
Now, when you say old school, you talk like Beastie Boys or like Boys to Men?
Boys to Men.
What are we talking about here?
There's Music Soul Child.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking R&B and then, old school rap, I mean, Jadakiss, DMX, Royce the 5'9". There's a lot of rappers that Big L and Biggie and Tupac and all those guys. So, and I don't listen to that stuff as much anymore, but it's always cool to, when it comes on or if it happens to hit on my playlist, it brings me back to high school or basketball days when we came out to some of those songs, or me with 12-inch speakers in my little car bumping loud music. So
Nice. Okay, 2 questions to go. Basketball question here. Go back in time and tell me about the biggest shot in your life that you've hit that you can remember.
Going into my freshman year, so I played varsity basketball as a freshman. They called me White Chocolate. I was the only white kid on the team.
Nice.
That's right.
White Chocolate.
So nice. Going in, we had a summer league or like a summer tournament. One of the bigger summer tournaments up by us in the Poconos area. And we were down 2 and I was a shooter. And I was 8th grade going into 9th grade playing with all these seniors. And coach was like, hey, we're setting up a play for you. Bring me off the bench. I'm cold. And hit me in the corner pocket. Drano. So probably one of the bigger shots that I hit just because of my age and, what it was. So we ended up winning that tournament that year. But that year, my first year, we set a state record for the most wins for first year school. So we opened up a new school that year. So our school split. Then the next year we won the conference championship. We went to states. So basketball I wish I was about 4 inches taller. I'd probably be all right.
You just brought up one of my favorite songs by Skilo, I wish, back in the day. All right, well, Rich, it's been a blast. Last question, I'll give it to you to take us home. You're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. When I say Eternal Optimist, what does that mean to you?
I'll go back to where we started, right? I mean, it's having the right perspective. It's having the vision of, somebody always has it better than me. Somebody always is going to have it worse than me. And if I'm in positions in life where if I'm comparing myself to anybody, that's probably where I'm going to be the most unhappy. And I try not to do that. We all have those times where we kind of look at other things and compare, but just flipping the right perspective, the right mindset. And I think having that optimistic mindset as well, it can help you be very, very successful. And so I always say, perspective, perseverance, and then just some passion is something that can get you to where you want to be. You got to be optimistic along the way and always believe that it's going to happen.